So let's talk about something that no one really tells you in your journey when you're first starting to learn code. You can watch tutorials, take online courses, you can even get a degree in computer science. But here's the truth, there's a hidden curriculum inside of that journey when you're learning the code. And these are the skills and the habits that actually make you a developer. And the funny thing is they're rarely taught or talked about in a classroom or online setting. You actually have to pick them up along the way. So in today's video, I want to break down 5 things that actually contribute to you becoming a developer outside of a quote unquote lesson plan. And if you're fortunate enough to learn them early on, you're going to save yourself months, maybe even years of frustration during that journey. The first item in the curriculum that no one really talks a whole lot about is the ability to debug. And I'm telling you, debugging is a skill in itself. At the beginning, every error message is going to feel like a personal attack on your code, right? You type something, you hit save, you refresh it, and then boom, you get a wall of errors. And you're starting to feel like, you know what? This is becoming more trouble than it is worth. I don't have time to deal with this. There's other things I could be doing with my time. And that's typically how most beginners tend to think. They see this as a failure versus a clue, which is, hey, there's something wrong, and here's what needs to take place. Debugging isn't so much about guessing what's taking place, it's about slowing down, reading the error message carefully, dissecting that code, rerunning your code in the console or the terminal, narrowing down the problem piece by piece. That's typically what's going to help you become better at debugging. Think of it like detective work. A bug is just a mystery, and every error message is a hint along the way, or a clue, or a evidence, if you will. And just like any detective, the more cases that you solve, the sharper your skills become, the sharper your instincts become with solving mysteries, if you will. So if you're struggling with bugs, it's a good time to start getting practice with debugging, getting comfortable with it, because the more you do it, the more comfortable you'll come with it. And I promise you, this is a valuable skill that you're absolutely going to use along the way, regardless of the programming language, regardless if you're a front end, back end, app builder, whatever it is. I can assure you debugging is something that a skill set that you're going to want to build upon during your developer journey. The second item on that curriculum that's not talked about enough is the ability to read documentation. So here's a confession. When I first started out, I didn't like reading the documentation myself. In fact, I'm not a big fan of reading unless it's something that I'm genuinely interested in, news, stock, technology, things like that. So having to read it, I was okay with it, but I did not like reading documentation when it came to coding. It looked overwhelming, it's boring, it's way too technical. And look, I just want to copy and paste what needed to be done inside of my code because I had bigger fish to fry. I didn't have time to be so concerned with reading the documentation and understanding what it's trying to teach. But then I eventually realized that the docs are the real source of truth. You see, a tutorial can be outdated within months, weeks, days, depending upon the technology. But usually the documentation is well kept, and that's going to be that source of truth that you can always reference in the event you need to marry 2 different technologies or you need to get past a bug that you may not be familiar with. When you learn how to scan the documentation and find the right section for what you're looking for, test out the examples in your own code, you're going to find yourself going from depending upon tutorials to being someone that can build projects independently. And that's the real turning point and what helps you genuinely become a developer. When you can sit down, build a project on your own without having to follow someone else. Even if you're leveraging tools like Stack Overflow or Google or Chat GPT or any Copilot or any of the AI resources out there, as long as you know how to build it from scratch and you have a good understanding of it, there's nothing wrong with leveraging those tools to kind of help with the journey. The next time you need to reference the documentation, don't read it so much like a textbook. Treat it more like a menu, if you will. Look for what you need in the moment. And over time, those small bits and pieces of information will suddenly start to add up, and then you'll realize that, wait, I don't need to Google everything that I need to find out anymore. I actually prefer to go to the documentation because I get a deeper understanding of what's going on. And it's just more mental exercise or reps, if you will, thinking about and utilizing technical terms and terminology, which will ultimately just help you become a better developer and have a better experience as you're going along your coding journey. The third item on the curriculum list that's not talked about a lot in a classroom or online setting is knowing how to ask good questions. So this is a big one. Most beginners, when they get stuck, they just say, it ain't working. I don't know why it's not working. Fix it. But here's the thing. That's not a question. That's a cry for help. And the real skill is learning how to ask the question so that someone else that can help you has a clear understanding of what you need. Try explaining the issue in a format like this: what you've already tried, what you expected, and what actually took place. So for example, instead of just saying my code don't work, try saying my code doesn't work, but hey, I'm trying to loop through this array. I expected to print every item within the array, but instead it's only printing undefined. Here's a snippet of what I wrote. Now that's a very good question, because now someone that's there to help has an understanding of what exactly you're trying to do, what message it's returning, and may be able to pinpoint rather quickly why it's returning undefined versus the items that's in the array. And you know the kicker with that is, the better questions that you ask doesn't just help you get a faster answer, it's also going to force you to think a little clearer about your own problem. And you know what? Half the time when you read that problem out loud, take your time and break it down step by step, you actually can probably solve the issue on your own without relying on someone else. And that's why I always say a underrated skill in coding is the ability to communicate, not just with a team member, but also communicate what it is that you're trying to do, what the problem that you're facing, and what result are you getting, but what did you expect? The fourth item on that curriculum that no one talks a lot about is time management. All right, let's be honest with each other. Coding can eat up hours and hours of your time without noticing, especially if you found yourself doing something that you're passionate about, you have confidence, you have momentum. You're just going to keep coding and coding all day because you know, hey, tomorrow it may not be so great. But here's the truth: learning to code is more so like a marathon, not a sprint. The ones who actually last are the ones that show up consistently day in and day out. There's actually a science behind this, and I believe it's called spaced repetition. Your brain learns something better when you practice it in small, repeated steps instead of cramming everything all at once. So while you're on your journey, instead of doing these massive code binges where you're coding for 8 hours a day and you don't code again for a week, aim for 1 to 2 hours a day consistently. Find a time, whether it's on a lunch break at work, whether it is while you would have been playing the video game, while you would have been somewhere wasting time doing something that won't contribute to your goal. Set aside some dedicated time that's uninterrupted and focus on an hour, maybe even 2 hours a day of just getting in some coding. I remember when I was first starting out, I would spend my lunch break in my car as my dedicated time to code, because I didn't always have peace and quiet inside of the home because I have a family. What I found was that, hey, if I can take my hour-long lunch break and use this time to work on a project or learn a new concept, this compound interest is really what helped me become better at programming and sticking with my journey to becoming a developer. Think of learning to code like going to the gym. If you wanted to get in shape, you wouldn't have just one giant workout once a week. You get in shape by showing up regularly and letting that effort compound over time. And before you know it, you'll have more progress than what you realize. And coding is the exact same way. The last item on the curriculum that's very rarely talked about in that journey to learn code is confidence comes in time. Now, this might be the hardest lesson to learn because most of the time when you first start out, you want to feel confident in order to keep going. But chances are real confidence may not take place until you've actually built something, gotten some feedback, applied for jobs, etc. It clicks for all of us at different stages, right? But the secret is this: you'll never really feel 100% confident. That just comes with time. Look, your code is going to be messy. You're going to copy and paste things that you may not have a very good understanding of. You're going to break stuff. And that's exactly how you get better at learning the code. Every project you finish, every bug you fix, every small win you get along the way is going to help build that confidence. So stop waiting on permission to feel ready, if you will, and just go ahead and take the initiative and grab the bull by the horn and start building those projects. Because here's the thing: the only way you're going to become a developer is your ability to actually build and finish projects. put it out there for the world to consume, gather that feedback, and continue to improve on that model. That's how you ultimately become the developer that you're looking to be. So what I want you to take away from this video is this. The hidden curriculum in coding isn't so much about memorizing syntax or cramming in tutorials or learning the most languages, if you will. It's more so about learning those invisible skills that don't always show up, and they're more so independent of what's actually in the curriculum itself. Learning how to debug, reading the documentation, asking good questions, managing your time, building confidence. These are the things that you're going to need in that journey when you're learning the code. And I can promise you, if you focused on these 5 things, you're going to find yourself ahead of most of those that are in your same space. But most importantly, you're going to find yourself better today than you was yesterday. So let me know some of the struggles that you had and what were some hidden curriculum things that you had to realize in your developer journey. And I love to hear about it and read about it in the comment section. And if you enjoyed today's video, feel free to give me a like, consider subscribing to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.